Coming up on this episode of Tom Talks Rubbish.
I like to think the promotion that we do, whether it's just me posting out on socials, whether it's just me talking about it like I'm doing it now, would help but sell one more ticket, and that one ticket can sell out a show.
What's going on, guys? It's your boy, Tom Talks and stand back with another interview. This time, I'm joined by the one and only Adam from Hitting the Turnbuckle. So, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks, Tom. And as just saying before we started, we tried to do this for so long, and it's finally happening. So I'm really happy to be here, my man.
I'm really excited to have you on. Before we get into any of your amazing work, whether it be your podcasting side or your shows with Ignite and things like that, where do you first discover wrestling, my friend, as an overall fan?
Well, it was obviously we were quite fortunate to get Sky when it first came out in the UK in the late 80s. So we were very fortunate enough to have that, and that's kind of where it started. I was watching like Wrestling Challenge used to be on, and WWF Superstars used to be on back in the day. And my first vivid memory that I can still remember to this day is there was a Snake Pit segment with Jake Roberts, and he took the Warrior down in the Ultimate Warrior down into this like I don't know, a pit. And a snake bit him, and the Warrior was climbing up to the feet, and he was at the feet of the Undertaker. So those are like my first memories of wrestling. Hogan and Warrior as well. The Warrior getting hit with the scepter by the Macho Man at the Royal Rumble against Sergeant Slaughter. And then before that, it was going to Brit Wrestling. So I met Giant Haystacks and then people like that when growing up. So that's where it started anyway.
Was you a World of Sport fan, or is World of Sport a bit before your time?
Yeah, it was just a bit before my time. I'd heard of it, but I'd never got around to seeing it, unfortunately, before it stopped. And then obviously it come back recently, didn't it? We saw it, and it's been reborn a little bit now. But no, previously I didn't see it.
You brought up there the rock and wrestling era. It's quite fitting actually, because I know this will air a few months in the pipeline, but you're the first person I've had on since Hulk Hogan's passing.
Mhm.
So I'm curious to talk about like, were you a Hogan guy back then?
Yes, and I still was. Look, the way I look at the things and when wrestlers die is it's always about the wrestlers. We only knew the man from what he done in the ring. Yes, was there controversial stuff outside? Of course there was, and you can have your own opinion on that. But his what he done to wrestling today, I don't think would be anywhere near what it's like with if you don't have Hulk Hogan and the legacy of what he done, even from the WWF, obviously the AWA, the WWF, then doing that big thing in WCW, turning heel, changing wrestling, then as we
Mm.
know it, and now obviously everyone passes. It's the way of life, and there is ones that get you more than others. And Hogan's did for me because of what he's. I think it's kind of like the biggest name other than Vince McMahon from my
Yeah,
childhood.
yeah, I'd agree with that. It's like it was the first. Obviously, we've had some very tragic
Yeah.
wrestling passings, whether it be Eddie, obviously Owen comes to mind,
Yeah.
Brody Lee, in sort of this generation. But
Mm.
Hogan was the first one that even I stopped and I went, "Holy sugar, honey, ice, and tea," if you know what I mean. Uh, that it's real, if you know what I mean. Like,
No,
because
I agree. I
yeah,
agree. Like there and for me, there's never been like you look at Mount Rushmore's not necessarily from a wrestling ability standpoint, but from what they done to wrestling. He
mm,
has got to be. You'd be lying if he wasn't on the list of people like that.
I fully agree. So we talked about the sort of rock and wrestling era and things there, Adam. But how does your fandom sort of change if we skip sort of through the new generation era and things like that? How does your fandom sort of change as the product gets more edgy and like attitude era and
I
the Monday
also
Night Wars as well?
Yeah, sorry. I also think it's you change as a person, like you grow up, right? You get older and
Mm,
stuff that like when you mentioned rock and wrestling, and it was more like PG. It was more there's good, there's bad, and you have to boo the bad and you have to cheer the good. That's what it's all about. But
mm,
then you go through like the new generation, and I started looking at like people like Kurt Hennig, who was around when I was there, but it was more of an appreciation of the work that he does because Hogan was the big one. He would get battered for pretty much the whole match. He would then take the finish, Hulk up, hit his six moves, and you loved it. It was great. The Warrior with that beat of the music and the running, and the guy was just high octane, high energy.
Yeah.
And I think what people maybe, I don't know, me personally, when I was starting to grow up and realize actually there's more of a technical side to wrestling. It isn't just about
Mm.
coming and hitting six moves. It's about the psychology and how it works. So as I started growing up and getting older, I took a keen interest into that side and the more around how matches are brought together. So that's where my respect for like the Kurt Hennings and the Roddy Pipers and people like that become along because Brett was getting big at that point and he was
Oh,
like that new generation of Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig and Shawn Michaels was just coming into his own at that point. And then as you head into the Attitude Era, we go through that rebel phase as a teenager, right?
yeah.
Where you hate everybody and you want to beat up your teachers and you want to beat your boss up. And all of a sudden, Steve Austin's giving his boss a stunner. You relate to that, don't you?
Mm. Yeah, yeah. It sounds like you're just the perfect age, Adam, to have grown up through WWE's eras, shall we say.
Yeah, I say fortunate. I mean, you're saying growing up, yeah, 40, 41 now. But yeah, I suppose in a wrestling sense, I've had it. I've had that. You kind of say you've had the good and the bad. And then you kind of moving into this more of, as you said, the edgier phase. Then you had the full on Attitude Era, Rock, Triple H, DX. And then NWO in WCW's sake. And then you moved into the 2000s when they all that sort of come together a little bit when WWE bought out WCW. You
Mm.
moved into like the ruthless aggression stage with Cena first coming in and debuting. You go into that, and now we're based in reality era. I always say now this is wrestling now. I don't know if I like wrestling now. Like, not saying I don't like it, sorry, but like in terms of, I feel that it's more people on the outside now, like the mega stars of like film and music. And we've had it, but I feel like it's now more engraved in, especially in the WWE now.
Mm. I understand what you're saying completely there. You brought up your current fandom and sort of maybe not liking wrestling as much. How much does that affect? Because we said you run shows with Ignite and you do your great podcast with hitting the turnbuckles and things like that. How much do you think that has affected you being able to sit down and watch things as a fan, shall we say?
I still watch it and I still watch it religiously enough. I still watch WWE. I don't have to necessarily be invested. Like when I was growing up in the Attitude Era, it was like you had to watch it. If you didn't watch it, you'd get bullied at school. Do you know what I mean? That's what wrestling was like back then.
Yeah.
I wanted to watch it because you wanted to see what Stone Cold was doing. You wanted to see what The Rock was getting up to. What's Vince McMahon doing? What's Undertaker going to be doing? Nowadays, it's not so much that, but it's more like, I love the Bloodline stuff, the original, the
Yeah.
OG. That's when that happened. Now that's died a little bit. I know we see the Solo and Jacob, but in terms of your question, it doesn't affect me watching it. I just might not get so much enjoyment and think I have to watch it next week. I don't get that anymore.
What has been maybe in the last couple of years or recently that moment that made you feel like a kid again and made you go, I have to watch next week, sort of thing?
Now that is a question. Maybe Cena turning heel was the most recent one. I didn't necessarily like how they done it, but the fact that he did made me want to watch Monday. And I was like, I have to watch Raw this week now because of that. So that's the closest one.
You mentioned you didn't like Cena's heel turn and how they did it there. Why was you not a fan, Adam?
I didn't like that. It goes back to the whole Travis Scott thing. I didn't like that involvement of it as such. And it kind of, I look at heel turns in the past and I look at the Stone Cold against The Rock. And I know I keep mentioning Attitude Era, but you go back to it. You go back to Hogan and barring Bobby Heenan saying whose side is he on when he walks down the ramp, you never felt as if Hogan was turning heel at all. And it got to a point in that match where I sort of sat there. I can't remember what point it was and it was Cody had decided that he wasn't going to join The Rock, and it was at that point when I went, Cena's joining it. And although it still surprised me because I kind of had that inkling, I just didn't enjoy A for the Travis Scott and B because I could see it coming rather than not being able to see it coming from the past.
Mm. I understand what you're saying completely there. Is that just the downsides? Because I know I have it with certain angles and things like that. Is that just a downside of being a well-seasoned wrestling fan, shall we say?
Probably, and probably social media, because they obviously, there's a lot of now back in daylight. If you remember when Jericho debuted on Raw, for example,
Mm,
maybe the odd person, there was a few signs scattered around to say that he was coming. But for me, that didn't really, that was when the internet was, you couldn't go as far as what you can do now. I was amazed. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like Luger debuting on Nitro,
yeah, yeah.
crazy. With the internet and being more polished and kind of, you understand it a little bit more. Yeah, I suppose it do get the fun taken out of it, so to speak.
Where is your fandom as we record this currently in July of 2025, Adam? Where's your current fandom?
Um, I'm really into the independents a lot now, and I suppose some of that's working with Ignite, but the podcast has really got me back in. I was really into the independents, then I went through a phase of WWE going to WrestleManias, and that was life.
Mm,
AEW coming along, TNA back on the rise again has really got me into that side. But I love going the independent wrestling now for me has been my for the last 3 years since this podcast has been going on. That's where I love to be of like a Friday and a Saturday or a Sunday. If I get an opportunity to attend a show like this week, for example, at time of recording, I'm heading to a show local to me. That's where I am now. That's my favorite. That's my happy place.
as we record this, my latest interview that goes up is with SP3, and he spoke about a lot about the UK indie scene and things like that, and the fact that we do have probably the best indie scene out there. So, why do you think? Because there was a lot of talk, obviously, when NXT UK debuted and things like that, the indie scene was dead in a lot of people's words. So, why do you think the indie scene in the UK has blown up again, Adam?
I just think the talent there, and there's also the talent, but also that people are attending seminars from the type of wrestlers that are coming over. More so now, we're getting some really big like NWA's Tom Latimer or TNA's Bram, whatever you want to call, wherever you know him. He come over and was doing a seminar, so people are learning. There is just, I don't know, there's just more talent. The talent field is incredible, and I think wrestling has changed now. When you watch the likes of AEW and TNA, and I don't like calling them an indie company because they're not. But if you look at the styles that
Mm,
AEW and TNA have, and you look at the British independent scene, there is just the talent. Then why nowadays we're seeing more of those talents join the likes of AEW and TNA because
mm,
they fit it. They don't have to be a quote unquote movie star with that physique and that you can get someone that may
you
not
don't
have the
pass
physique,
the
but
airport test so much anymore, do you?
yeah, exactly that. But there's just so many things, and I think there's just more people now that can see that that dream is a possibility where perhaps it wasn't, 10, 15 years ago.
You mentioned that hitting the turnbuckles as a podcast has been going 3 years there. So to
Yeah.
take it back, Adam, where was the initial idea for the podcast? Everything in between, my friend.
So that was Andy and Parker. So these were two guys that they're still on the podcast sporadically now. They started it during lockdown. Andy was based over here in the UK. Parker was based over in America. And they were doing that. They do podcasts for Washington Commanders. I think they're now. They were the Redskins in NFL. And I come on initially as a guest. I went to Clash at the Castle, the first one.
Mm.
And I come on as a guest, and I'd known Andy like 13, 14 years, and he texted me once and said, like, he knew I was going to Clash at the Castle, he said, "Oh, do you want to come on my wrestling podcast and talk?" And I was like, "You had a podcast and never told me about wrestling." And so I went on as a guest, and then a couple of months later, it was because of the time zones from the States to the UK. It was
Oh yeah.
as you know, right? It's increasingly difficult for Andy and Parker to be able to get together to do the review shows so that we do. So we review everything: Raw, SmackDown, AEW, TNA, NWA. So Andy was like, "Do you want to come on and start doing it with me?" And this was sort of like September 23, maybe let before that, maybe 22, 20 September 22. And yeah, I went on from there, and it's been like a crazy ride ever since. It's been incredible.
Where was your fandom at that point? Was it like, oh, I've got to get back into wrestling if I'm going to do this, or was you completely high on wrestling at that point?
Oh, I love it. I don't think I've ever lost that kind of love as much. Like I know I said earlier on that I'm not really keen and into WWE at the moment because of the sort of the outside people coming in, but I've always loved it. So it was just a case of never being able to do this before. And to be honest, I wish I'd thought of it sooner because nowadays it's like it's the in thing, right? Loads of people have got a podcast, but I just wished because I love talking wrestling. And I love talking about wrestling, and I feel as if I know enough to be able to make it interesting. So it was more of a case of give me a microphone and let's see where it goes.
How did it then go from you doing some reviews and things like that to you sort of bringing your own people in, whether it be Fiona for your NWA reviews or a very good friend of mine, One Breezy, for some Raw reviews and things like that?
Yeah, Fiona, come on. I mean, we had interviewed Fiona as from an inside the ropes perspective. Obviously, Fiona does a lot of stuff. She works in Pro Wrestling Scotland and Premier British Wrestling announcing, and she does work with Inside the Ropes during the tours that they do. And
Mm.
we
She's
brought
been on the
Fiona
channel
on as a
before.
guest.
She's awesome.
She is. She's amazing. We brought her on before and had an interview with her just as a guest interview. And she used to go and she still does when she's watching NWA on. She'll put a picture on X or Twitter as it was known then, saying that she's watching NWA. And I messaged her and I was like, NWA isn't that like the 70s? I didn't know it was still a brand, like a,
Mm.
a real brand. And she was like,
Mm.
no, it's a real thing. And I was like, oh, hang on a minute. There's a space here to do NWA. So I said to her, would you be interested in coming on and doing a weekly show? And that's how that started. One Breezy was quite recently, Jordan. Obviously, since a lot of where we've had a lot of like Andy's had to, of other commitments, he's got other podcasts like Completed It, like the Washington one, like Dunstable
Mm.
Town. He does all the media for there. Parker's in America. He's got his own life. It's been more difficult. Dave is another one when he first started the podcast, he wasn't been able to work due to injury. He's back doing that full time now. So when I saw Jordan One Breezy stuff, and I was like, he could be someone good to bring on and to do some things together with. And I'd spoken to him. We'd been talking on X for a while, and I just said, look, if we get a spare days that we can do some stuff together, would you be interested? And that's how it worked. And Jordan's been a great addition to the podcast as well.
Mm. Jordan's a very good boy. Him and me are very close in a wrestling media perspective. It's
Yeah.
quite funny actually because we both interview creators. We had this sort of healthy competition, might be the right word. It's like, oh, you got so and so. I'll help you out with this person. Then, like,
Yeah.
we have some very good connections. Me and Jordan get on very well. It's great to be honest.
Yeah, it's good. I don't mind the little competition, like healthy competition side. It's always like when someone announces a big guest or someone like it, in the content, even if like a content creator. We've done the same thing. We've had a few content creators on, and it's just like, wow, some of the names, and I'm just thinking I more like will congratulate them as well, and just say that's an incredible hook to get them in.
Oh, I fully agree with you, man. What do you think? You talked about adding Jordan and Fiona to the podcast there. What do you think they have brought to the podcast that was maybe missing or that you feel like they've added to the podcast, maybe?
Fiona adds a wealth of knowledge from an NWA perspective, which was key for us to do that podcast. I'd never seen it in years. I'd never seen NWA full stop. So Fiona adds that. She adds her own uniqueness that only Fiona can add to it. She's not afraid of speaking out, which is a bit like me. Like if I hate something, I don't like something, I will say it.
Mm.
Fiona's the same. She will say that. She just brings a different. I mean, like her when we interview NWA stars, I always give her the last question on the show. And nowadays, she has elevated that question. Like she asked an NWA wrestler, like, if you could be a part of a wrestling, but not the wrestler, what would you be? And it's just like some crazy questions. Jordan brings on a really nice bit of articulation when we're watching, when we're reviewing shows. I haven't done an interview with him yet, with somebody with him yet. That will maybe coming soon. But he's a bit of an articulate guy. He's got his own thoughts and feelings, but he demonstrates that and puts it out there in such an articulate way that brings a little bit of difference. Where I'm just sort of in your face, bang, 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 bang. He brings that more kind of, I wouldn't say calmness to it, but he will bring it down to a nice, comfortable level for us to go back up again.
Mm. That's really, really cool. What about you? What do you think you bring to the podcast that maybe they don't?
It's just craziness, probably. I'm not afraid to speak. I mean, I'm not saying that they wouldn't speak their mind. I mean, Fiona certainly does. I suppose a bit energy in a lot of ways. I think if you watch the podcast, especially if I've really enjoyed a show or I've got a really, not necessarily a really big guest, but like I've got a guest, I take a lot of stuff from Chris Van Vliet. That's who I look up to. That's like the measuring stick for me of this game, right?
Oh yeah.
He's incredible at what he does, and I do try and be more so now because I've watched more of his stuff, and maybe I was a bit too sort of erratic at the start. So one of the things that I have learned to bring into my game is to sort of calm the pace down a little bit, because sometimes when my difference could have been I was really sort of 100 miles an hour at you in your face. So it's kind of like reeling that back in, but still keeping that. I suppose what brings me to it is the energy side of things was what I bring, I think, anyway.
That's really, really cool. You talked about the energy there, Adam, and things like that. Obviously, to schedule this to peel the curtain back, we've had to do it a bit later because you work full time and things like that. How do you keep that energy up, man, when maybe you're recording quite late and things and you've had a full day at work? How do you keep that energy up, my friend?
I think that nowadays it's just kind of knowing when to like sort of say not say no, but like if I for example if I'm doing a review show and I've had a hard day at work, I used to be like, no, I've got to get it done, I've got to get it done, and I think that hampered it. But nowadays, if I'm like, you know what, if I'm not feeling doing a review, I will just not do it and I'll wait another day to recharge the batteries and just get back into it. If it's an interview, on the other hand, I've done all the research. So I'll just go at it anyway. But a lot of it now is kind of knowing when to say, do you know what? If I'm sitting in traffic on the way home and I'm feeling a bit tired, I'm not going to do the review show. That can wait for another day.
How much did WB having sort of a UK residency pre-Mania help you with reviews and help you with your fandom?
Yeah, a lot easier when they're doing shows where you can watch it at 8 o'clock and review it at 10. That's for sure, or something along those lines. It was great to be able to do that. It does help because look, as you know, Raw's on at like 1 a.m. over here. SmackDown's on at 1 a.m. The pay-per-views, unless they're in Saudi Arabia or somewhere else, are on at 1 o'clock in the morning. So it's difficult. I would love to be able to do what people like Wheezy Blonde and Conman do and be able to sit up and do those live reactions because I think they're tremendous. And
Mm,
I've been fortunate enough to have, as a Conman on and Connor on, and I just think they're so like sometimes you see the reactions and people you can say, "Oh, that's false." You can tell there's a bit of like thingy with them, but with like One Breezy and well, not One Breezy, sorry, Wheezy Blonde and people like that,
mm,
when they're watching it, that emotion, that whole thing just comes out. I'd love to be able to do that, but obviously due to times that I can't. So to have it over here, to be able to watch it and maybe even go live and watch it was just so much better for us.
mm. What do you do, Adam, that's not wrestling? Like, what? How do you deal with burnout as a creator and things like that?
Well, my son is a good distraction of a weekend, for argument's sake. I see my son over a weekend, so that's kind of a welcome distraction. I don't know because as you know, as I've already mentioned, we work quite heavily with Ignite Wrestling with the Hitting the Turnbuckle Championship over there. So a lot of my time, a lot of my come down time is kind of doing that. So I'm kind of always doing something, whether it's a podcast or an interview, or if I'm not doing that, I might just be sitting at home watching a crime documentary or something like that, whilst looking at matches on YouTube, trying to find opponents for the championship.
Mm. You talked about the Hitting the Turnbuckles Championship and your shows with Ignite. As we record this, you've got one on September 19th, is that correct?
September the 21st.
September the 21st. I do apologize. I should have written that down. I do apologize, man. So how did the first show, because I know this is the third show you've done
Yeah.
with them, how did the first one come about?
So we'd been sort of getting into sponsorship from wrestling companies for a bit of time. We'd already been involved with a couple already. Andy kind of had known CJ or Chris from Ignite, the promoter, prior to it, and we were trying to think of ideas about what would sell it differently because partnerships are generally or sponsorships are generally the same thing. You give the company money and they promote you. That's what they were doing. But
Mm,
Chris and Andy wanted to do something a little different. So it was like, well, how can we do something that's not really been done before? Because Chris is the type of person Chris is, where if you're going to do something with him, He's
Mm,
gonna want to do it and do more, and he wants to make sure we get as much out of it as what he does. That's was the great thing with Ignite. So
mm,
Andy and Chris were talking, and Andy messaged me and said, "Hey, look, what did you think about if we do a joint show with Ignite?" And it was something that really interested me because I'd never done that before. I'd wanted to find out a bit more about the promoting side of wrestling and how that works. So we agreed to do it. I'd never seen Ignite at this point. I'd never been to a show. So this was prior to their April show called The Bitter End, and I went to see that. And the first thing, me and my girlfriend, when we walked in there, that was different from every promotion that we were dealing with, was it just felt like home. Everybody
mm.
there was just like Chris was like, go upstairs, kind of, the floor's yours, so to speak, go and mingle with the talent. And I think that's really good because some promotions are very much against that. Maybe that's from bad experiences, or perhaps they feel as if you're going to annoy the talent, or to a degree. Whereas, like we went up there, we're respectful. If they want us to do some interviews, we'll do some live interviews, and we've done that. But the element of that show come together then, and then we followed that when we were talking about, well, what's next. That was when the whole idea of the Turnbuckle Championship become a reality. So we
Mm.
announced that we were debuting that championship at our show, and the winner would be crowned at the following show in September.
That's really, really cool, man. So you talk about there it, everything that sort of happened to get the shows off the ground. What is something you feel? Because obviously we can talk about how the podcast, how they've helped you as a
Mhm.
podcast. But what do you think you've done to sort of help them as a wrestling show, have being partnered with them, sort of thing?
I would like to think that we've helped them grow as a company. I mean, like we get to, the good thing about the championship is we get to perhaps bring in people that they, not, and this isn't disrespectful because I'm sure Chris will say it. We would bring in talent that perhaps they couldn't bring in
Mm,
from a monetary perspective. So we'll try and bring as big a name in as possible. Not because that's part of helping Ignite grow. And I like to feel that with the work that we do, with the promotion that we give Ignite at the same time, and the fact that we've brought in some of the best in the UK. Tate Mayfair's has come in and been a part of Ignite. We've had Connor Mills come in. We've had Michael Oku
mm,
Buckle Up come in and be a part of it. Luke Jacobs was there last year at Buckle Up. People that perhaps Ignite just wouldn't be able to bring in to the company, we've managed to bring in for a show. And I'd like to think that's helped them grow. And I like to think the promotion that we do, whether it's just me posting out on socials, whether it's just me talking about it like I'm doing it now, would help but sell one more ticket, and that one ticket can sell out a show. Their last 2 or 3 shows have been sellouts generally,
mm.
legit sellouts. So I'd like to think we've helped them in that sense.
This might, I might be putting two and two together and coming up with five here, but how did sort of bringing Fiona on and things like that, because she works for an established brand of Inside the Ropes, how did that help the podcast, do you think?
I think that it brought a bit of a name standpoint. Like if someone, when you say inside the ropes, people know who that is, right?
Mm,
They know what they do. They if they've been on the line, and they get some big names in. I think Fiona helped with that sense as well, and perhaps also had a hand in us being able to get on the TNA media thing because we've got someone like Fiona. She's maybe only on a show a week, but we've got that. I wouldn't say I would say it's like a name in draw, but if you needed to say you needed a reference from somebody, I would put Fiona in there because of her what she's done in wrestling and the fact that people will know her. So she's definitely brought that maybe legitimacy to it.
What's your sort of goal with the podcast and your shows with Ignite? We mentioned that you have a full-time job at the moment. Is it to sort of be doing this consistently and full-time and make this your job? What's sort of your goal?
My God, do you know what? Like I've interviewed so many people now. I mean, we've done 214, I think, interviews since we started a couple of years ago. So I would always say that the fact that we've managed to interview Jake Roberts, DDP, Buff Bagwell, people that have grown up with my childhood, I could safely say, that if I were to die tomorrow, I'd die a happy man in terms of the podcasting sense. Now, would I love to be able to be on the WWE UK media side of things? Yeah, of course I would. I'd love them to do what TNA do to me, and I get a message from the people that run the UK media saying, "Hey, can you interview so and so at a certain time?" And I'm always like, "Don't ask, just tell me." because I'll make sure I do it. So I'd
Yeah.
like to do that. I don't know whether I'd like to do it full time, you know. I love what I do. I love my job. I love what I do. And I like that differentiation between I actually get to go somewhere and work to
Oh
come
yeah.
back and doing this. So I don't think I'd like to do it full time. But then again, if no one's ever offered me the opportunity to do that, so it's hard to sort of say whether I would or wouldn't like doing it full time. But I suppose the goal for me really would be to get on that WWE UK media. But having said that, if it never happens, I'm not going to cry about it.
That's really, really cool. You mentioned not going to cry about it if you never get on the WWE side and things like that. Who was the interview that you're like, holy shit, for lack of a better word?
Yeah.
Who did we've just interviewed that person? Who was that person for you?
There's a couple that come to mind. Eric Bischoff was one. Fiona was the one that got us Eric Bischoff, by the way. Fiona was the person that made that happen the first time. He enjoyed his shows that he come. It's down to him the second and the third time we've had him on, but the first time was all Fiona. That was a big one. That was huge for me. But one of the ones that probably goes under the radar, and you'd have to be a fan, I suppose, of ECW. Shane Douglas was a big one
Mm.
for me. It's because I'd listened to his interviews in the past, and he just takes you back. You know, he can literally he'll tell you who was in the room with him, what he was wearing, where the vending machine was. He's that good. So Shane Douglas was another one. Done one recently with Rob Van Dam, which was tremendous. But I think Bischoff was the first one and Russo. Russo was the first one. My first interview that me and Andy done together. That was huge to get Russo on and to have an hour of his time was amazing. So Russo, Bischoff, and Shane Douglas were the three for me that was special for me.
How do you talked about sometimes you and Fiona will both interview someone, you and Andy will both interview someone. How do you balance that sort of okay, you can ask a question now, I can ask. How do you because you know each other, I imagine you know how each other's brain works, but like how do you balance that sort of thing?
Well, we like to make sure. I mean, in Fiona's case with NWA, I always try and make sure she gets the brunt of the interview because NWA was her thing. As I've always said before, NWA was hers. I want to make sure that she gets as much out of it as what I do. With me and Andy, there's just like acknowledgements. I know he's going to talk in a minute. I can just see it. I can just look up at him, so I know he's going to talk. But we always make sure that everyone, even if it's David with the AEW stuff, and we've been fortunate enough to interview some AEW talent as well, it would just be literally making sure that we both get, a reasonable amount of questions in the allotted time, which is difficult sometimes when you only get 15 minutes.
Mm. Have you ever had an interview's time cut down? Because I did recently, and it's like it's horrible. You've done all this research and stuff like that. Have you ever been promised a certain amount of time and then been told, sorry, no, this has been cut down?
Luckily enough, no, I haven't had that, and I can imagine because you do the research. I'm sure that you do pages like I do of research when you've got guys on. I think the not necessarily cut down, but I've had it where I've got all these questions to get asked, and I've got to make sure like it was a TNA interview, and I had to make sure I always make sure I promote TNA, right? That's my goal. When I've got a TNA guy on,
Mm.
my it's promoting TNA Plus, promoting what they've got coming up, what's on Impact, and obviously in the middle of that talking and you're only getting allotted time. And if they have a really long-winded answers to your questions, you've got to
Oh
start
yeah.
scribbling out. So that's the only thing. But I've never had one cut, and I'd probably be a bit upset and a bit annoyed, probably like you was when they said that.
How do you sort of you mentioned there for like most of your interviews, they're promoting something. So how do you because I know somebody called Benville, who's a very good friend of mine that does the Wrestling Life podcast.
Mhm.
He says he'll try and sneak in fanboy questions, if you know what I mean. How do you try and sneak those fanboy questions in whilst they're promoting something?
I don't. Is the answer to that. I feel like for me, if TNA tell me I've got somebody for 15 minutes, it will be all about that. I will make it all about that. And as much as selfishly, I want to ask a few questions and maybe ask something that perhaps wouldn't be, I'm not say wouldn't be appropriate, but is not about TNA or is not about them. I wouldn't do it is the answer. And I don't mean this disrespectful to your friend there. I would just find it disrespectful if TNA offered me a talent and I started maybe asking her questions about other things. It wouldn't feel right to me, so I just
No,
wouldn't
I
do it.
understand that. And maybe I gave my friend a bit painted him in a bad light there. I meant to sort
No, I
of
know
say,
what you mean. I know what you mean.
I meant to sort of say, like, when he's doing a podcast, he'll obviously cover the big things,
Yeah.
but then occasionally he'll ask the questions he wants to ask, is what I'm saying. How
Yeah.
do you ever sneak those questions in that you're like,
No, I don't. I would if it's not like if, for example, if I interviewed a TNA talent and then 6 months later they come back and it's not a TNA interview or not an NWA interview or that, then I would. That's the sort of time for me to sort of have it like what we're doing now. If it's like that, then I will do it. But if it's a time where I've got an allotted time, I've got to make sure I promote this, and this, I just wouldn't do it.
I understand what you're saying completely there. You talk about wouldn't do stuff and things like that. So, what's your advice for people that want to be doing what you're doing, whether it's promoting a show, whether it's podcasting? Any advice for the good people?
Just do it. That's the thing. David, one of my co-hosts, was a prime thing. I met him. I hadn't so bearing in mind me, David, and Andy. Right, this is a quick just segue a little bit. We'd been on the podcast, and I hadn't seen Andy since TNA in the UK with Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff. So I hadn't seen him properly in 13 years. I hadn't seen Dave since Brock Lesnar returned to WWE at the Raw after WrestleMania in Miami. That was the last time I'd seen Dave up until 2023. I hadn't seen him. I'd spoken to him. We obviously keep close in Texas, so I hadn't seen him. So I met up with Dave, and he's like, I've got a headset. I love wrestling, but I'm worried that people wouldn't like my accent because he's from the Midlands, so he's Birmingham way. So, you know, what the Brummy accent and stuff. And he said, I just don't have the confidence. And I went, Dave, like, just come on with me. It's not live. We don't, we do live stuff, but generally the reviews aren't live. So if you mess up or you freeze, it's absolutely fine. Just, but the advice really, and Dave's done brilliantly at it, is just do it. If you want to be a podcaster, just get in front of a microphone. If you make yourself look an idiot, I do a lot of weekly. I don't care. And it's about just going out and doing it. If you want to promote a show, find a promoter, just have some conversations with them, and just make it happen for me. That's what I did. I just decided I want to do it. Andy gave me the platform, and I can never be thankful for him for giving me that opportunity. But just do it is the answer. Don't worry about what you think, what people might think of you.
You talk about Andy giving you a platform there and things like that. Does that sort of come with I have to do this because I've been given that platform? Or would you be comfortable, say you lost your passion for wrestling, would you be comfortable saying to Andy, sorry, dude, I've got to step away for a while?
If I needed to, yeah. I mean, he's done it. He's stepped away before and come back and stuff like that. Me and Andy have that friendship where he can just text me, if he wanted. For example, he's busy with other things right now, so he's not on Heart as much. If at all, recently he will come back sporadically and do bits. If he texts me tonight and say I'm coming back to you full time tomorrow, great, that's fine. And likewise for me, if I said to Andy, sorry man, I'm not going to be able to do this much anymore, he'd be fine with it. But it was him that made this even a remote thing happen in the first place.
I understand what you're saying completely there, my friend. As we wrap this up, because I do want to be respectful of your time, my friend, and I just have a few wrap-up questions and things like that. But I do have a bit of a self-indulgent question before we wrap this up. Where can I improve? What did you enjoy about this conversation? Everything in between.
To be honest, I love the conversation. It flowed really, really well. I think you can get them that don't flow well, if that makes sense, and some that you feel like you have to say something or it's like forced. But with you, I found it really, really entertaining. You kept the conversation going. So I don't think, in terms of improvement areas, I would have to watch it back. But my general thing is like I really enjoyed it, and if as long as I'm enjoying the podcast, then we're doing the right things. You're doing everything right, my man.
I really appreciate that, man. As we wrap this up, I do have two questions for you before we do the classic Tom Talks rubbish wrap-up segments. That's hard to say, man. If you did, we talk about stepping away and things like that, and would you view the podcast as a success in your time on the podcast as a success?
I think so. I think from where it was to where it is now is done amazing things, and everyone that's been on the podcast, whether it's been for one episode or the over 1,000 that we've done, anyone that's played a part in it has been responsible for it. Even like my girlfriend that does a lot of the pictures behind the scenes when we go to events and takes a lot of the camera shots that you see on Instagram and things like that. I think if we walked away today, we would definitely be a success.
What do you think the legacy of the podcast is, and what would you want your legacy as a podcaster to be?
I would like it as someone that's always been able to, was always willing to help, and like we've done with Ignite, I would love to, people to sort of say, hey, look, they've done actually really well and done good stuff for not only themselves but from Ignite. So I think it's always something that's a podcast that's giving rather than a podcast that's taking.
I understand what you're saying completely there. But as we wrap this up, Andy, we are going to do the classic Tom Talks Rubbish wrap up segment called Generic Wrestling Questions. Those of you that have seen my interviews before, and I swear I'll ask Andy his favourite match, favourite pay per view card, such as Double or Nothing 2019, his favourite wrestler's entrance team, favourite tag team, and favourite wrestler of all time. Basically, so now you'll have a place, man, to be like, I've answered this. Please go watch this. So, what's your favourite match of all time?
The favorite match of all time, you're never going to be able to see it, unfortunately, unless you were there. My favorite match of all time was Kurt Angle versus The Undertaker. It was WWE House Show in the XL Arena in London. I want to say it was after they had one at No Way Out, which was fantastic. But they had one in London, and it went about 45 minutes, maybe less, but it was just absolutely incredible to be able to watch those two go at it. And with me, when I'm watching wrestling, I study it. I don't cheer, I don't boo. I just laser eyes on what's going on. It was just an incredible match to see. So unfortunately, I can't say to people go on YouTube and watch it because it's not going to be there. But that's my favorite match I've seen.
That's really cool. And the first time in almost 230 episodes of Tom Talks Rubbish, we've had a live house show match as somebody's favorite match. So
What
I
can
think
say?
that's really cool, man. What about your favorite overall pay per view card?
WrestleMania 17.
Why does that one speak to
Undertaker
you?
Triple H, first time ever. Incredible to see that. I just think top to bottom of that card, maybe in hindsight a close second because it was my first ever WrestleMania that I went to see. WrestleMania 21 maybe up there as well, but 17 for me just because I think it had everything.
Did it annoy you? You brought up Taker Triple H there during the sort of end of an era build in 2012, I believe, that match was just scrubbed from the record books.
Yeah, it did annoy me. I was always hoping for a Undertaker Sting at one point, at WrestleMania 27, I think it was when the signs pointed to Sting. So yeah. On a side note, yeah, it did annoy me that it was scrubbed from in the record books. Yes.
I understand what you're saying completely there. What about your favorite wrestler's entrance team?
I ask this a lot on my podcast, and I give different answers every time. I think it depends on the mood that I'm in. But today, it's going to be Metalingus and Edge is my favorite song today. Today, ask me tomorrow, it'll be something different, but that's today.
Why does that one speak to you as a fan?
I just think it's great. I'm a big Edge fan. Actually, I was never a big Edge fan up until he beat John Cena at New Year's Revolution, but that just changed everything. I just love it. I just think that song, the song defines wrestling, right? One of them ones, it's that. And that for me, it's a nice bit of rock to it. And yeah, I just think that one defines wrestling now.
You mentioned being at Clash at the Castle 2022 there.
Yes.
I believe that was the first time, at least that I can remember, that the crowd was singing his song. So what was that like to be in the crowd for that?
Oh, hideous, because I was singing it at the same time. I know it was great. I mean, to hear, I think Judas might have been before that. Chris Jericho, maybe.
What I meant was like singing Edge's song. I do apologize.
Oh, singing Edge's. Yeah, I mean, I would hum it to myself when I was there, but when you hear the whole crowd singing it, it definitely raises it definitely puts goosebumps on you. That's for sure.
That's really, really cool. And what about your favorite tag team, my friend?
Ooh, I used to love tag team wrestling growing up. I really did. So in that case, I'm gonna say because I would have said like Shawn and Triple H, but they were more of a faction. So I'm gonna go with the Rockers.
Why do they speak to you as a fan, my friend?
They were just colorful. They were high flying. They were fast, quick paced, energetic guys. And it just like when I was growing up, it was like, wow, these guys are cool, like flying around everywhere. And then it went into the Heart Foundation because I love the technical bits that Brett would do.
That's really, really cool. And then finally, the biggest generic question, in my opinion, who is your favorite overall wrestler of all time?
Steve Austin.
Why does he speak to you as a fan?
He's just incredible. Well, obviously the hair and that, for example. No, I think it's when I started this tour, I was talking about relating, and like I remember watching Steve Austin as part of the Hollywood Blondes in WCW with Brian Pillman, and it was just like, and he had the long blonde hair, and he was a bit of a cocky, arrogant guy. When he come to WWE and he was the ringmaster, I was like, I can. You saw a different side to him. I didn't quite get there. He had a great in-ring presence about him, but then you just find that character, don't you, that just works. Undertaker was the Undertaker, right? That was a character that just worked. Me, Mark Callis didn't work that way. It was just perfect, and it was the whole. It related to where we were in society, and yeah, everything there was just brilliant, and that's why Steve Austin was my man. And his entrance music was great.
That's really, really cool, my friend. But as we wrap this up, Adam, the question I end this show on is, I believe as YouTubers, podcasters, even just people with social media, we're all sort of going to live forever in a very, very strange way if you think about the world. So what is one piece of content you're like, I'd like to be remembered for that? And then what is one that you're like, nah, you can forget about that?
You can forget about the one that I done from my hospital bed. That would be
What?
one. I had heart failure before the first All In. You know, the first All In,
Oh, yeah.
and I was in hospital, and I ended up doing a Raw review from my hospital bed with Andy. So you can forget about that one because I don't like to think about myself having the heart failure issue that I had. The content definitely Bischoff, anyone with Eric Bischoff in, because it was just brilliant. That'd be the one.
Wanting to do it from your hospital bed, was that sort of at the time when you was like, I can't miss a show. I can't miss a show. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, that was just insanity. No, it was like, no, to be fair, it was, I missed doing it. I hadn't done it for a couple of days. I'd missed like I think I'd missed like two shows, not a lot, but I was just itching to just get back on and just talk to Andy properly and just get back into it. So why not from my hospital bed? It was the day before I got discharged. So I was like, why not? Let's do it.
I think that's a really cool story to end that on, my friend. As we do, please promote yourself. Where can the good people find you, your work, etc.?
HTT Buckle on X, HTT Buckle on YouTube, here in the Turnbuckle podcast on all other social media outlets. And as this is going out just in time, if you want to go and watch Ignite Wrestling and Hitting the Turnbuckle present Buckle Up Free, go to 96 Eventbrite, type in Buckle Up Free, and your tickets will be hopefully will be there for you.
It's well worth doing, guys. One of the hardest working people in this space, but one of the nicest as well.
Thanks.
So if you guys like this, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Tom Talks Rubbish on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter or X at Tom Talks Rubbish. And I will see you in the next one. Goodbye now.
Thanks for watching this Tom Talks Rubbish conversation. Before you go, please make sure you leave a like on the video, share it around, and subscribe to Tom Talks Rubbish on YouTube, as well as follow Tom Talks Rubbish on Twitter/X.